Namaste, Shriman.
Namaste.
I had this question. I was watching a video. In that video, there's this person who's sitting in a room, locked up in a room for many months, maybe as an experiment or something. And then they show that slowly he's becoming crazy and all that. Maybe he's been there for 2.5 months or so in a dark room, in isolation, all by himself. He has some things with him, like music equipment and all that. But then I felt like you have been in Mauna for more than 40 days every year. Now I think you've more than about 350 days of Mauna. So what does it feel, or how does it feel when you are inside that room? Crazy is the word often used, to describe such situations. But how would you describe that?
I know, many people know they want some excitement in life, some kick in life, and hence they try out various things. And as part of that, one of the adventure that people try out is like being in a cave or being in the forest and or being in a room which has no sensory input or what is called sensory deprivation, and that people try out, and that is very good. No, that's not wrong. Just that I would not describe it as crazy or weird. So people look at it as crazy or weird. Those give a negative connotation to it. These have always been there. For example, we visited the cave yesterday. So if we look at the cave, yeah, at one point it was totally dark. It was so dark that if you close your eyes or open your eyes, there is no difference. And there was no sound at all because we were deep into the cave. And it was perfect temperature. It was just same temperature throughout. Now, that was just maybe for a minute or so, and hence we did not feel so much about it. And we knew that we were together, so there was no sense of isolation. Otherwise, it could be a challenge where you are alone and you don't know what is what. And hence, one would describe this as crazy or weird because for a normal person, the normal identity of who I am is generally built on top of what is called the sensory, stimuli response mechanism. So I see, I hear something, and I respond to it. That is the identity of a normal person. What is normal is, again, I'm assuming what is called statistical significance. Otherwise, you can have normality at multiple scales, right? At deeper and deeper scales, normal. So for an average person, the sense of identity is built by this sensory stimuli response mechanism. And sensory stimuli response mechanism means you need audio visual input and respond to it, right? And the other senses are also there, but primarily the audio visual, what you hear, what you see. And for that, operating conditions are with light, with sound. You don't deprive yourselves of it. And that is a strong conditioning. Everyone is conditioned to accept that as the normal, right? And hence, if someone tries out something what is called extreme of what is normal, which is like you don't get audio visual sensory stimuli, and you don't have this response mechanism, then that is considered crazy. That is considered weird. And most people would have even like a post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, because that can cause trauma, not having regular sensory stimuli can cause trauma for people if they are not appropriately prepared. But yogis have always known, yogis and the Siddha tradition or in the meditation tradition, we have always known that that is not the, one need not end there. it can be deep exploration into much deeper aspects if you go beyond this sensory stimuli response zone. And this, to transcend it, that's why you would see terminologies like abhinivesha. Abhinivesha is a classic term which comes in Maharishi Patanjali's Yoga Sutra that captures this, where you've built your identity based on regular sensory stimulus and response mechanism. And what if that is not there? Then most people, regular people, will encounter what is called a fear of loss, a fear of loss of identity, because that's the only identity that they have consciously invested in.
In fact, Maharishi Patanjali talks about abhinivesha is something that bites, or is even a yogi is affected by that.
Yes, definitely.
Because one fear that we get when we take up the path of yoga is, what if we lose the current identity that we have, right? We could be somebody's child, we could be somebody's parent, or we could be a professional, or we could just be alive. And then feel that, okay, if I meditate further, will any of the loss of these identities happen? So abhinivesha that way is a very expected reaction. So what happens, when you are sitting in isolation, in maybe with minimum light for so many days together, are you not afraid of things?
Yeah.
People can be afraid of lizards. So even simple thing like a cockroach or a lizard can
and imagine the cockroach and imagine lizard.
Yeah, and snakes for that matter.
Yes, imagine the snakes. See, the mind can be so tricky. It can pop out. Anything can pop out of a mind that is crazy, that is crazed out. Yeah, that's where, if we see the concept of being alive in a very practical sense is to do with this stimuli response, sensory mechanism. We depend so much on that for our sense of feeling alive. I'm live and kicking. That means, I'm able to respond to stimuli, right? And that is the sense of feeling of, yes, I'm alive that we get. Now, that's why abhinivesha is looked at as part of, as a klesha. And why would Maharishi Patanjali place it there? So klesha means that which causes obstacles, or which is not so beneficial. So there is that fear of loss when we feel when we don't respond, we don't have the sensory mechanism. But one need not fear it at all. So that's where, how do we take it further? How do we deepen that sense of being alive? Especially in modern sciences, we are taught, for example, in neuroscience, we are taught that I think, therefore I am. And that thinking is based on the sensory mechanism. Or we are taught that brain is the source of consciousness. Now, is brain the source of consciousness? Is the central nervous system deciding how alive we are, how conscious we are? So that's where, if we look at the ancient spiritual traditions, and modern spiritual traditions, which is a continuity, we look at it in terms of, how do I deepen my level of, the feel of who I am? How do I overcome this limit that the senses impose on us? Now, that's a very deep question. And that provides a powerful motivation for us to explore these horizons, which regular people do not invest in exploring. But this is like an investment in exploring the, the horizons of the thought. Who am I?
No, in fact, when you're talking about this exploration, I'm reminded of one of my friends. She was sharing about the experiments that she used to do in her lab. So she had to measure the quantity of some kind of a powder, and then she had to put it in a physical balance. But then every time she would get some kind of an error or the other, because it's a physical balance. Like, if you take a sack of sand and measure it, you don't need that kind of a precision. But in a physical balance, obviously you need that kind of a precision. Then one odd day she noticed that her window, which was next to the lab table, when it is slightly open, then this reading used to go,
Amazing.
bad. Because the small whiff of wind that is coming through the window used to upset the readings. So I can imagine, like, if you are trying to broadly understand the mind and all that, being open in the marketplace, trying to just engage with the senses and the outside world makes sense. But if you have to look at the mind in a very minute sense, then it becomes a lab experiment that way.
Yes, that is well said. Actually, that actually you've hit the nail on the head. If we look at it, it's like a experimental protocol. When it is just like a researcher who shuts herself in a lab to be able to observe deeper aspects and hence come up with deep science. Like that, yogi or siddha shuts themselves from the regular sensory mechanism to be able to deep dive into into their consciousness, into the inner dimensions, inner realities. And for that, if one is starting out on meditation, just a little bit, then this would sound extreme. In fact, it's not advisable because you'll need to stabilize your emotions. For example, various fears would come out. If we actually look at it, the first thing that many children are taught is to have fear for the dark, right? While it need not be at all. We went into the cave. It was dark, but one need not fear at all. It was just when the light is shown, it's very clear, what is there. So that imagined fears, that is what we have to encounter. Like that, many of us carry imagined fears. Now, how do we overcome that? And that's a systematic process. And there, when a yogi or a siddha purusha, shuts themselves off from sensory stimuli, as you have rightly stated, it is like a deep research. It's a deep dive into the research into consciousness. And for that, a deep motivation becomes very important. What is the motivation that a researcher has in shutting themselves off into a lab space, cut off from regular stimuli? This, and at a deeper level, a much deeper motivation the yogi or the siddha has in shutting themselves off to be able to deep dive into their consciousness and discover the pearls of wisdom that they can offer to the world, and thereby making the world a better place to live in. So, and that kind of a deep motivation is what we encounter when we ask the question, who am I?